Okay, well, it's 2 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for giving me a slice of your valuable time today. I really do appreciate it. My name is Carson Black. I'm a lead web developer from the University of California, Davis. I work in the web development group. It's in the main IT department, essentially, which we call IET. I will be giving a link to the slides at the end of the presentation, so if you want to get those, they'll be there. I was one of the developers and the Scrum Master on the project I'm here to talk to you about today, the Article 26 Backpack Project. In 2011, the people of Syria began a revolt against the long-standing tyrannical government of their country. Perhaps you've heard of the term Arab Spring. It's uprisings of citizens that are seeking more democracy and freedom in countries across the Middle East. Some of these uprisings produced marked change, and in others, the uprisings were swiftly and completely crushed. In the case of Syria, it was the spark that lit the fire of a brutal, long civil war that continues in that country to this day. Caught in the crossfire of this battle are average citizens of Syria, people like you and I, many people that are very much like the students of the campus we're on today. But unlike you and I, and unlike the students of this campus, the people of Syria face a daily fear of being shot, bombed, attacked with chemical weapons. They know many people who've been killed, many friends, many family members. Millions of people have been forced to flee the country into neighboring countries to seek refuge. And as a refugee in a foreign country, you're not necessarily free. You've escaped the immediate danger that you're in, but now you're also kind of just stuck in whatever camp you've ended up in. The Article 26 Backpack Project seeks to find a way to assist students who become refugees to regain the freedom they once had to pursue their educations. In order to make the backpack a reality, it took a great deal of collaboration in this effort between not only our own IET department and UC Davis Global Affairs, but the American Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers, which is ACRO, and the Issam Fairs Institute of Public Policy and International Affairs at the American University in Beirut. This video explains a little bit more.
Right to education, a right to work, a right to be a parent. You have rights because you're a what? You're a human being, right? And you don't stop being a human being when you move across borders. These basic core rights were imagined by the people establishing the contemporary human rights regime as something that goes into a backpack. She's able to keep these rights no matter where she goes in the world. Now, as various people often say, there's a difference between theory and practice, right?
If you are Syrian, you have nothing, you have no rights, you have no life. Like, I'm here since 2012, and like I live the life, and it's not the one I was dreaming about.
During the Syrian war, I was not able to do anything to save people or even to do something for my country. Education is the key.
For refugees, many of whom have lost a great deal of their material lives, education is a kind of movable capital that they can continue to develop, that they can hold on to, and then it can go with them.
With like this situation, so many people traveling from one place to another, they lose a lot of their important documents. When you apply to a scholarship, when you apply to the university or to a job opportunity, you have to have the documents with you. But it's not like any other website. It's being saved in a very professional, organized way. That's what makes it stands out from other websites where you save documents.
This is the only chance I have. My friend told me about the Article 26 backpack. I came to register as a backpacker. Then I discovered that we can be guides, so we can help other refugees to get their backpack. I discovered that many Syrians, especially the refugees, many of them have attended trainings, workshops, they are graduated, they have master's degree, and they are not working. They don't have the opportunity. And here where I discovered how important the Article 26 backpack is for them.
I think it's giving the chance for those people, for them, to erase the stigma, because maybe I can't do it, I cannot do it. But when we give those people a chance in order to pursue what they started, maybe their academic achievements or career or whatever, you're enabling them to erase that stigma.
At its heart is the ability for young people to begin to rewrite what it means to be a refugee, especially a refugee seeking to become a leader in their community through higher education or advanced training opportunities.
When I first read about the backpack, I just started to dream. Some of them lose their certificates, and it is very important for them to be able to compete with other students graduating from other universities and coming from different other backgrounds, to really have this as a full package to present it when they have a job interview or when they just need an internship and apply for it.
هلا أنا إنسانة كتير طموحة، كتير عندي أحلام وكتير عندي أهداف. جيت لهون لأنه أول مرة بسمع بشيء اسمه حقيبة، فحبيت اكتشف هيدا الشيء، حسيتها سيف أكثر لإلي.
بتهين التعرف على بعض مع أكثر، رغم يمكن يكون كل حدا فينا ببلد، فكتير حبيتها. أعمل شيء بحياتي إذا ما أنا كنت نتعامل اليوم مع شهاداتي.
Think about refugee and displaced populations of the past. They often are communities that emphasize education above all else because they know that at any moment their land could be taken away, their wealth could be taken away, but no one can take away their education.
Education is the key for building Syria again, and this is the only thing that we can do as Syrians. The only thing I have to do right now is to improve myself, to work hard, to build up my skills and be positive, because if I'm negative, I will fail.
So I could have told you all of that, of course, but I think it's better to hear from people actually using it. That it's actually helping. And the gentleman you saw there talking in the blue shirt was essentially our client. It's Dr. Keith Wattenpot, who all of this was his idea. So from a technical perspective, what is the backpack? It's essentially a web application that's conceptualized around the idea of a digital backpack with compartments, and you can put all of your education documentation in that. It allows for a safe place to store the information and an easy and safe way to share the curated packages of that information with others, and that's known as a backpack, regardless of the circumstances, as long as you have a connection to the internet. Some key attributes of the system are that it be mobile friendly. You saw a lot of tablets and phones in that video, not a lot of laptops and desktops. So it has to be easy to use, of course, accessible and safe. It has to be available in multiple languages. You have to have the ability to have roles with assign that access and those roles to others. As you heard, she was talking about being a guide, so they have actual little sessions where a person can come help you and guide you through getting set up on the backpack, getting an account, getting all of that. And it needs to be capable of being expanded to handle eventual workflow for evaluation and validation of the documents by a third party, that ACRO group I talked about earlier. So when the backpack project came to our team, it came to us with some constraints. There was a previously failed project, an attempt at building this by another organization. And so now the timeline was under a lot of pressure. This was being funded by a grant from the Ford Foundation, and the budget was as well. There are also concerns regarding security and access to the information for such sensitive populations. Also this was being launched right around the time of the implementation of the GDPR guidelines and regulations for the European Union. So achieving some sort of compliance with that was a bit of a concern as well, as there would be students who'd be sharing some of their data with folks in the EU. The initial audience for the application, as you can see there, were native Arabic speakers with some somewhat limited English skills. So we need to be able to translate, all the interface for this and the content of the system into Arabic. Also, another constraint here is that Arabic is a right to left language. So the design was going to have to accommodate that as well. So our team has a lot of experience with Drupal, and when you carry around the Drupal hammer, everything looks like a nail. So we usually lean in that direction for most of all our projects. And while Drupal 8 was still somewhat of a new release when we got started with this, we were pretty early adopters of Drupal 8. We felt fairly comfortable using it, and we'd seen some steady growth in the number of contributed modules that were happening out in the community. But that being said, the nature of this project, because of all this sharing of things and all that kind of stuff, had us thinking that we might need to use some different kind of framework or tool, some sort of a JavaScript framework perhaps, or something that could do native mobile operating system output, something like that. But when you look at kind of what you get out of the box with Drupal, we kind of found that it was going to have a lot of what we needed to give us a real nice kickstart to make this thing happen. And we really did need a head start because of these time constraints. So learning some new tool was starting to kind of be out of the question. And while there's a bit of a learning curve there, the thing I do want to point out is that highly extensible piece that's listed down there is very important because it does, especially Drupal 8, gives you an incredible ability to override and expand its out-of-the-box capabilities, which we were going to need to use. And so you can kind of get into every part of Drupal fairly, I would say easily, but maybe not easily, but at least you can make it happen. And all the tools are there to make that happen. It just takes some learning, that's all. Well-built, well-tested, vetted, supported, contributed modules that would be available. And the ones that were particularly helpful to us for this use case were these here. So the Me Redirect module, we use that quite a bit. It's an interesting module. It's kind of strangely named, but the idea is to help perform redirects to users' pages, the user that's logged in, without having to jump through some kind of difficult hoops that to get to the user ID when you're trying to do redirects and stuff like that in Drupal. The profile module plays a major part in this build, and it's the main entity type that we used for this system. The role assign and the user protect modules kind of work in concert with each other. It gives us the ability to delegate the ability to control other roles without having to expose like the most powerful administer permission to make that happen to somebody. So that's how you can have a guide make another person a guide because they've trained them on being a guide. And user protect kind of works with role assign to further protect what can and can't be edited by certain roles down to a little more granular level. The video embed field, of course, for easily handling YouTube videos. There's a little component of this I'll show where they're able to kind of produce a little video about themselves and put that up on the site. You know, a little introduction to themselves, that kind of thing. So we needed a way to do that. And of course, Entity API, because we were going to create our own entities. But it really does unleash the full potential of the entity system in Drupal that is extremely powerful. So let's take a look at how some of those come together to help make the site work here. So to start off here, we would, we're going to log in. This is the home page. We're going to click login. And this would be after I've already set up my basic account as a backpacker. So I've already agreed to the privacy policy, set my password, but I haven't any profile updated yet. And I'm directed to this page called the map page. I'm given information about the various sections of information that you can put into the backpack, the different compartments, and what goes where. And I'm also prompted to complete my profile there. So here's what the map would look like after I've entered in some data. The top part is the profile up there. And then we have the digital portfolio and the education portfolio compartments. And these are just types of profile entities. That's what all those are, just different types of those. Portfolio is a place where they can put up a little intro video, like I said, the current organization job title, certificates, training, documentation, CVs, etc. So just a place, all the different things they'd like to store and a place to put them. And the educational portfolio is more focused on just their education documents, the schools that they went to, diplomas, certificates, transcripts, letters of recommendation, other related documents to their schooling. And you can enter multiple schools there as well. So click add a school so you can have more than one school. So, of course, for specialized use case like doing sharing and things like that, and building up those shared backpacks, you're going to need some custom modules to make that happen. And so what we did need to do was create some custom entities. And we built a module for that, which is called the Backpack Sharing module. I'll dig into that in just a second. But we also needed to do some custom form custom form and redirect handling to help get those backpackers and the guides to the right places of the interface of the application. And they're not always Drupal's sort of normal routes that we wanted to take them to, like that map page, for example. We had to enforce some rules around GDPR compliance in regard to the agreement to the privacy policy. So you're forced to have to actively agree to the privacy policy before you can get into this thing. That's a GDPR kind of a thing. You have to opt in. And so also the redirect module helps with that in that it keeps forcing you to go back to that privacy policy, not only when you're brand new into the site and creating your account, but also anytime that privacy policy has changed. So we keep track of that node. We know it's changed. We then redirect you back the next time you come log in to go actively, once again, agree to the privacy policy. So we did that, and we used that in concert with that redirect module. And slightly more technical level, we implemented an event subscriber to do this. So if you're wondering kind of how do you approach that in Drupal 8. But GDPR also requires the right to be forgotten. And out of the box, Drupal's file handling actually doesn't quite play very nice with that rule because it can leave behind files in the file system. And as you can see, there's a lot of, most of this is like file storage, right, of people's personal information. So the compliance module that we built, that module ensures that when the user accounts are canceled, all of those files are completely removed from the system. There are some issues in the backlog regarding, for core regarding files that are marked as temporary, never actually being deleted. That was actually done on purpose to kind of be able to play nice with multilingual things. So what you think may be happening in the back end of your Drupal site with temporary files may not actually be happening, even though that's what they say is happening. So you do want to make sure that they get marked as temporary and then they are actually being cleaned up and deleted. And we do that with our module that we created here. The other thing that we have here is the Article 26 profile module. It's a simple module, and that just modifies the profile module's labeling. It has a weird way of labeling its stuff with like its unique identifier number instead of an actual label or title. So we fixed that to be labeled with the entity types, name. So that way you're getting an education profile, not a 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 profile for some reason. That's just a weird thing with profile module. Again, implementing an event subscriber. So those come in handy. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that sharing module because this is at the sort of heart of the whole thing. It creates 2 custom entities, the share entity and the share item entity. And the share entity is the thing that sort of represents a shared backpack as a whole. And the share items, so you can have many shared items to one shared backpack or share entity. And so it provides the share entity has attributes that sort of change how the path works. So instead of the way you would normally get to the path of a particular instance of an entity or piece of content that's one of those entities, usually you just got an ID. But that would mean that you could figure out what a particular shared backpack's ID is because you could just enumerate those ID numbers and probably come across some. Not so in this case. We use the UUID, which is a random hash for its path, and that provides some obscurity and can't be accessed by just enumerating. We also have a custom entity access control handler that we put in here that provides a way for anonymous users that have been identified by their email addresses the ability to view a given backpack that's been shared, a given shared backpack, as well as the associated files that have been selected from the various portfolios for that shared backpack to be shown. Now, all of the files are stored in Drupal's private file system here because for security reasons. So what we did was we didn't really poke a hole in it. We just made a new access handler that gave you a way to view those if you could be authenticated in the way that we needed these people to be authenticated. So there is a way to get around some of those limitations given the fact that you can indeed extend Drupal's capabilities to do that kind of thing. So there's also some additional cache invalidation. We just run up against all of the hard problems, of course. So cache invalidation is one of the hardest in all of programming, and it's no different in Drupal. So we had to do some work there to make sure, that this whole idea of being able to show a person a particular backpack based on who they are as an anonymous user, that they're actually being shown the correct backpack and correct files. So the backpacks also become unviewable after 7 days. There's an extra class that controls the timeout for that. That's configurable in the admin interface as well, so we have a little interface for that. So if they want to change how many days that time's out, they can totally do that. And you can also reset that timer as a backpacker. The share item entity, that entity has all of the fields in it and stores the fields in the database for the particular profile that you're referencing, the field name of that particular profile, the UUID, the file ID that would be associated to those file fields, And then of course what the related share entity ID is. So that way we can put all those things together. So that's why that's clearly like some custom handling of data. So that's how that works. And we also implemented a custom item selection class that's used for injecting the profile fields, the individual fields, into that shared backpack interface. So when you're creating a new one in that form, you're seeing all of the fields being filled in from your various profiles. And also, we added in a little extra, some nice JavaScript stuff to kind of help with selecting all of the items all at once, or toggle it on and off, things like that. A little bit of, you'll see in a second, a little bit of sort of like what do you call it? Indenting and stuff like that to make it a little bit nicer. So anyway, we also implemented a custom mailer class that uses Drupal's mail manager to send out the emails to people who are selected to be a reviewer of a particular backpack. So let's see all of that stuff in action. So first what we see here is what a shared backpack looks like. So you can see here's a list of all my shared backpacks. I only have one. We click on it and it's, come on, click. And so you can see here, you can see essentially what a person reviewing this backpack is going to see, except for that I have the edit button because this is mine. And you can see an indicator of that expiration date up there. And you can see I basically shared just everything in my profile, in my portfolio. So we'll scroll down here so we can kind of take a look and see what this ends up looking like. Again, pretty basic, but we had to keep this interface pretty basic because, I shall show you in a second, it has to work in Arabic as well. So let's take a look at creating one of these shared backpacks. So when I do that, I'm going to click add a new shared backpack, and it's going to give an explanation of what's going on here. You're going to put in a title, and then you can put in here as many reviewer emails as you'd like. So these are the people who will receive your a link to your particular shared backpack, this particular shared backpack. And that's how we know who should be able to look at this or not. Again, here's our little fancy form handling and all this kind of stuff, and the injection of these fields from all of those profiles into here. So this is what gives you the ability while you're using this form for creating this entity to actually reference all these other entities at the same time. And so that was all done by that custom module. Then we click save and send, and it sends off the notifications to whoever should have received it, those emails. So if I'm the person who's received that email, so I'm on the receiving side of this backpack, I get an email like this with a link. You're not supposed to click links in your email, but I just did. And then you put in your email address, and that's the only way you can get in. So if you put in a long email address, you won't get in. If you're not on that list of people who are supposed to be reviewing this, you don't get in. And you can see all the information that I've selected on that previous screen when I was creating this are all here. You can see all my, here's my fake diploma. And you can see, how as an anonymous user, I'm not a regular Drupal user here, I'm an anonymous user. And I'm able to see all those files, play the videos, and that's because of the special access handler that we created. So you can see how that works. It works great. So as I said earlier, we needed to implement this this application in multiple languages. Drupal 8's multilingual support comes with it right out of the box was a massive help. We certainly couldn't have got done in the amount of time that we had. We couldn't have got that work done without having this built into Drupal. So it really did boost our productivity in this case. So we translated the English version of the site. So we created in English first, and then we translated it into Arabic. And more recently, we also translated it into Spanish. Now, there's language files that are provided on Drupal.org, and they provide a translation that you can just import it will translate all of Drupal's built-in interface components and all of the language stuff there. So it'll do that, but we also needed a bunch of custom translations for our own entities and our own forms and all of our own labeling that we have here. So the admin interfaces were easy enough to use that we put just translators, people who had really never worked with Drupal before, to work on running through the translations and using that interface. And they had absolutely no problem. They did a great job. They did it very quickly. It was pretty obvious what to do there. It just works great. So let's go ahead and take a quick look here at what it looks like in the site itself. So you can see we have a little language switcher up here where we can switch between the various languages. I'm going to pop into Arabic here. And you can see we've switched to using the right to left spreadsheet, which is also a thing that's kind of built into Drupal's multilingual capabilities. All of those form elements are translated. So when you go in here and you're looking at a particular form, like to edit something, all of the form elements have been translated here. You know, the little notifications. Choose a file is actually untranslatable in Arabic, we found out, which is really interesting. But you can see that all of that stuff was completely translated. Huge win, by the way. The client's impressed by that. We were impressed by it actually because it was our kind of first time doing something like that. And so huge kudos to the contributors to Drupal who got that into Drupal core. Seriously, I couldn't imagine the amount of work that went into that. So fantastic. Yay, open source. A big part of the success that we had with this project was due to our process. And so many of the key pieces of our process are listed here. We use a development methodology called consultancy Scrum, which we actually learned about at this very camp some years ago. It helps with implementing the Scrum process and agile processes when you're building projects for clients. So we operate like a little, digital agency within the university. And so we're always working on various different projects for various clients. And we're not just like a core, well, we have some core finance stuff, but we also do that. And so when you're not just iterating on one single product, this consultancy Scrum, approach helps quite a bit. And so you can read more about that at consultancyscrum.org. But one of the key tenets of consultancy Scrum is that you always assume that the budget is inflexible, and flexibility should come from the timeline and functionality, which definitely came into play here, because we were able to alleviate some of those time constraints that we had by chunking the work into phases and providing usable pieces of the system within short time frames and achieving a little minimum viable product that could be iterated on over time. So that idea of iterating on things and being flexible on the functionality were key to talk about right from the beginning whenever there was that, we were first approached to take on this project. We were able to split out that multilingual stuff into a second phase, and there are already other phases planned, like credentialing, so that we could spread out the need, to meet a particular time frame, and also we're able to spread out, the ability for the client to achieve better and more funding for some of those more ambitious pieces. Having a dedicated project manager was actually very helpful on this as well, to kind of ease some of the communication stuff that I, as a Scrum Master, had to would normally have had to do on a lot of our projects. A really important one up here is the empowered product owner. Look, I even put a star next to it. It's important to have this person. They're a person from the client who is sort of dedicated to working with our team on the project. They're there throughout the sprints. They're there for all of the sprint reviews. They're there for the sprint planning meetings, all of that kind of stuff. It's important for them to understand that they've agreed to kind of having a time commitment and that they are going to be continuously involved throughout the development process. And we had a really great one on this project. Her name's Mona Finukane. you ever get a chance to meet her, I don't know why you would, but maybe you would. She made this thing her highest priority, and Dr. Wattenpaw was on board when we explained this to him, and knew this was going to be her role. And so working with clients like that and having a clear communication right up front about that expectation just sort of sets the stage for some real success around that. We also, on a more technical level, we use automated testing with PHP Unit and BHAT and continuous integration, some of which Mark Miller will be talking about tomorrow. We use Probo and Circle CI for that continuous integration and deployment, along with Pantheon hosting, which having the multi-dev environment available, along with the dev, test, live, all those environments, and the automation we were able to achieve around that kind of stuff comes in very handy. And of course, as Matt would tell you, Pantheon never goes down. All of this stuff, none of it happens without fantastic people. And here they are. These are all the folks who worked on this, including our two people from our client here, Dr. Keith and Mona. And so as far as dealing with like kind of people issues that we learned from this project, some of the following ideas are kind of important. So when you're dealing with a tight time frame or a budget, identifying early on where and if there is any flexibility whatsoever is very important to understand right up front, and get the client to understand there's going to have to be some of that. Again, that empowered product owner is a very important thing, super important. For developers on the team, keeping open communication happening, making sure that even if you've got people who are all working remote, you're all still staying in communication with each other. You have good tools that allow you to make that happen. And having a really good idea of the team's velocity is very important as well. So getting an idea of how fast or slow any given developer is and how fast your team is as a whole. And again, our project manager kind of helped with monitoring that as well. And of course, having an opportunity to help people in need is a very big motivator for a lot of people, including developers. We're not all just heartless robots sitting behind our computers. And we definitely saw that with this project. So overall, we had some really good outcomes from this project. Success here is measured by signing up refugees as backpackers, and those refugees sharing their backpacks in order to continue their education and progress in their career. So this was achieved almost immediately upon launch. There were sessions with the guides that happened right away, and the momentum is continuing. There's more than 600 refugees that have created accounts. I think there's even more now. There's about 200, at the last time I checked, I think it's grown, but there's about 200 shared backpacks to date, so that's good news. There's been national and international media attention from the Washington Post, NPR, Dries' blog, more importantly. We managed to be completely on time and completely on budget, so that's a huge, that was a huge achievement. And more recently, Dr. Wattenpaw, he was awarded the Institute of International Education's Centennial Medal, which is pretty cool. So some future backpacks so future plans for the backpack include translation into French. That's the next language that's going to be added in here. And the specific, sorry? And Persian. And Persian, that's a new one. It's so new, I didn't even know that. And that's with the specific aim to assist French-speaking populations of refugees that are in West Africa. We want to implement this idea of a thing called the Compass part of the project, which is a way for credential evaluators, that's that ACRO, really long name, of that group. It's a way for those folks to validate the documents that the refugees are providing in their backpacks as a way to kind of help reconstruct their academic histories that have been lost or destroyed in the whole process of, running away from wherever they had to run away from. As you can imagine, seeing those buildings that you saw in those earlier slides and in the video, if your academics and records office looks like that, where's your transcript? This would be done by automating a workflow for assigning and assigning the validation tasks to members of that ACRO. And they're sort of a cloud-based international group of credential evaluators, which you probably didn't even know existed, but they do. And so this is where some of Drupal's more recent API first initiatives and things like that could come in very handy to implementing those workflows with an external system. We've also started some exploratory discussions with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees about possible integrations with their data system, where they're keeping track of all the refugees that are out there, and also looking for ways to integrate some academic counseling and job placement assistance from third-party organizations as well. So again, thank you very much for letting me take up some of your valuable time today, and I hope you have a great camp. Thank you. There's the thing for slides, and I will take questions. Eric.
I have like 3 questions.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I can answer them.
But first, for someone that's not familiar with profiles API, why did you use profiles? What advantages do they give you over like
The profile entity itself, is sort of attached to the user, but it's like, instead of it being you putting a bunch of fields on your user account, it's an entity that's one thing, or well, you could actually say multiple, but you can have multiple different ones, which is what we needed. Like we had 3 different kinds of profiles that we needed to collect data for and attach to a particular user. It doesn't work exactly like a node does. It doesn't require a title and all that kind of stuff. My time is up. Thank you, buzzer. So yeah, it's a little bit more user-centric, based on the user entity essentially, and connected to that more closely than say just normal nodes would be. And interface-wise, it kind of made more sense as well.
Also, the access control map is very close to how we want that.
Yes. Yeah. It also has its own.
So this lets you say, oh, well, I want to let people see this profile or not.
Right. You can just say, hey, go to my, you can go to the URL that's your profile, right? And it's your profile, right? And so it's directly connected you automatically like that. So that's not something that would normally happen with like a node necessarily. Yeah.
The second question was, in terms of security, like the security of those projects
Yeah.
is really important. Like
Yes.
you have all these files that are very specific for people.
Yes.
How do you have any tooling or automated security tools that you use to basically check and make sure that all the file paths, all things that could possibly be exposed for security?
No.
Well, no.
I mean,
we wrote BCAT tests.
we have.
To test for new files are uploaded to make sure they would be able to be accessed by
Right.
non-users unless they first put in patching.
John is correct. So yes, that BHAT test, for example, well, it's one of the many BHAT tests that works on that part of it. We have pretty good test coverage around all of that to make sure that it's not.
Outside of that, you don't have any security thing that you did. That's for like, being in XSS scripts or anything.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well,
Security hole on the platform.
no, we haven't done anything like that. Probably a good idea.
I forgot what. Everyone else.
Any questions? Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.